Hello YouTube, and welcome to another Elder Scrolls lore video. Today we're covering Vivec's power crisis in the Second Era, which plays a central role in the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind. This video is dedicated to my friend Wolo Wizard and his girlfriend, who both really enjoyed the Vvardenfell questline and requested for me to make the video about it. So be warned that this video will spoil the entire main questline of the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind expansion and part of the later Clockwork City DLC and a really small part of the Somerset Isles DLC. So you're warned if you want to play that. And now, let's hope that I don't disappoint them, and have a good one, guys. In year 582 of the Second Era, an unnamed outlander steps on the shores of Vvardenfell at the port town of Sotha Sil after escaping from slavers on Firemoth Island and being saved from the wreck of a slaver ship. This outlander is you, after completing the introductory quest of the Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind. While making their way through Sotha Sil, the outlander happens upon a priest in distress next to a dead soldier. Upon speaking with the priest, it's revealed that her name is Canon Valassa, a priest of the Tribunal Temple, Morrowind's living gods, and she reveals that the dead soldier next to her is a buoyant armiger, a warrior from the personal knights of the living god Vivec. She says that she's been sent to the area by the living god himself to seek guidance at the local Andrano ancestral tomb on his behalf, but that they were ambushed by Daedra at the tomb and driven out. She reveals that her colleague, Canon Levul, is still at the ancestral tomb as he's insistent to complete Lord Vivec's mission. She asks you, the Outlander, to go help him, as by himself he stands no chance against the Daedra in the tomb. You agree to help, but just before setting off, the Daedric prince Azura possesses a bystander and proclaims that by dawn and dusk, evil creeps through the shadows of her beloved Vvardenfell, but an Outlander has arrived to aid her people, just as she is foreseen. This Outlander is of course you, and this then sets you off on your quest to ultimately save Vvardenfell from the apparent impending shadow that Azura has spied in your future. You then make your way through the Andrano ancestral tomb together with Canon Levul, who reveals that Lord Vivec sent him to the ancestral tomb to ask some questions to the spirit of his ancestor, Vvardenfell Andrano, who in life was a student of the living god Sotha Sil before he rose to power with Vivec and Almalexia. Vivec hopes that her spirit will be able to reveal the cause of something which worries him greatly, but which isn't really clear to the player yet what it is. Once the summoning ritual begins, Canon Levul gives you a sheet of instructions with questions to ask to the spirit, as he maintains the connection to the spirit. The questions are all very cryptic in Vivec's usual way, but those who have played the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind will be able to discern that Vivec is greatly worried that the heart of the world, also known as the Heart of Lorkhan of course, source of the Tribunal's divinity, is actually in danger from an old enemy, Dagoth. The spirit of Vvardenfell Andrano reveals that his worries are unfounded as the heart remains safe, but she tells you that an old enemy indeed did return, however not the one that the warrior poet Vivec fears. Because as we all know, Dagoth would not return for some time yet. However, according to the spirit, some other ancient enemy of Vivec has returned and is causing that which worries him so greatly. After the ritual, Canon Levul implores you to come to Vivec City with him and tell the living god of all that you two learned. Together you travel to the Vivec City, which is still under construction at this time in the Second Era as you arrive, and you make your way through the city towards Vivec's temple in the far south. When you meet the living god himself, he's grateful for your help in Canon Levul's mission and greets you as a friend, and at the same time he asks you to set aside your personal goals for a while and become the eyes and ears of a god, as he says that he's desperately in need for a fresh perspective, as nobody can help him with his current conundrum. You, as Outlander, agree to be this fresh perspective. But before telling you more, Vivec asks you to attend a divination ritual that he will perform with its archcanon, a man named Tarvus. The archcanon highly mistrusts you as an Outlander, but is overruled by Vivec and is forced to work with you, and you then help the archcanon prepare the divination ritual. The archcanon then reveals to you that something or someone is interfering with Vivec's power, and thus you will need a blessing stone, which is a sort of jewel infused with Vivec's former power, kind of like a battery that he charged before the whole crisis. And that you will need this stone to power the ritual so that Vivec himself won't be too strained by the ritual. After fetching the stone, the divination ritual begins, which is to give an insight of sorts into the matter at hand, however cryptic it would be. And this ritual doesn't disappoint in the cryptic side, as during the ritual you do not get to see any solution or root of the problem that Vivec is facing. Rather, the ritual shows you 3 people before the ritual somehow fails and explodes in your face. The ritual showed an Ashlander, a mage and a Daedric cultist. While this is not the information that Vivec was hoping for, it does provide enough of a lead to start an investigation, and the Living God then finally lets you in on the full gravitas of the situation. He reveals to you that his divine energy is quickly fading. How or why, he has no idea. The curious thing, however, is that this phenomenon is not happening to the other 2 living gods, Sotha Sil and Almalexia. It's only happening to him. After what they learned of the divination ritual, however, Vivec has a solid idea of where an investigation into the matter can start, so he and archcanon Tarvis sent you on an investigation to 3 places: Balmora, Aldrune and Barrelzar's Tower, all places closely tied to the visions that the divination ritual gave you, as Balmora recently had problems with the Daedric cult, Aldrune is where the heretic Ashlanders who do not follow the living gods of the tribunal gather, and the mage Barrelzar is simply the person that was seen in the ritual, the mage, and thus he must be somehow connected to the current problem. At those locations you discover that each indeed contain a connected lead, as when you go to Balmora you find out that the Shulk ore mine was recently closed after Daedric cultists invaded it, and that they started to prepare some sort of a ritual in the mine. This ritual was to utilize some mystical weapon and give them the powers of a god. However, before the ritual could finish, an Ashlander from the Red Exile tribe stole the weapon and prevented the ritual from actually finishing. And it just so happens that when you travel north to Aldrune, the Ashlander tribes are in a bit of a commotion. As you arrive near Aldrune, you see that several Ashlanders are fighting among themselves, and you are then introduced to Serin, a diplomat of the Urshulaku tribe, and sister to the tribe's current archcanon, Chodala, which is the leader of a tribe in the Ashlanders. She tells you that her brother, as Ashkan, invited the Red Exiles, a tribe made up of other tribes' exiles, to the gathering at Aldrune, and he wishes to unite all the Ashlander tribes, including them, and wants them to follow his lead. Together you find out that Chodala has recruited the Red Exiles as a sort of personal army for himself in order to let them back into Dunmerry society, and had them steal the Daedric cultist artifact during the ritual. This worries Serin greatly, and despite her mistrust of those who ally themselves with the tribunal, she decides to explain the situation to you in hopes that you can help one another despite your different alignments. She reveals that Chodala recently changed, as instead of desiring peace and diplomacy, he recently talked more and more of utilizing the Ashlander tribes and going to war against the tribunal, and those who ally themselves with the tribunal. For the past months he's been riling up his followers for war, but even more recently he got into possession of a strange artifact, a staff he calls Sunara, or the Blessed Staff in Dunmerry. This staff gives him near divine power, and he has used this power to proclaim himself to be the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar, the Nerevarine. He claimed this, desiring to unite all the Dunmer and commence a cleansing war, and oust the tribunal from their false divine pedestals and reinstate the worship of the good Daedra. Serin has tried multiple times to talk him out of this idea, but the power of the staff, Sunara, has solidified the idea in his head, and soon Chodala will present his claim to be the Nerevarine to the gathered wise women of the tribes, in hopes to gain recognition as the Nerevarine. Serin then sends you off again to report to your false god Vivec, and then wishes for you to return to Aldrune to help dissuade Chodala at some later point. But before you return to Vivec, you investigate the final place that archcanon Tarvis and the living god have ordered you to investigate, Barrelzar's Tower. At the tower you meet the mage Barrelzar, and he reveals that he was a student of Sotha Sil for many years, and that at some point Sotha Sil experimented on his own divine energy. Specifically, Sotha Sil wanted to discover the limits and develop some sort of tool to do it with. This tool was eventually designed, and it was designed to siphon away a part of his own energy for study. He says that this tool that Sotha Sil developed for research on himself could, if landed in the wrong hands, be weaponized to steal divine energy, and that he currently has no idea where the tool could be. When you leave the tower, suddenly Red Mountain starts rumbling loud and starts to spew ash again, something which worries the archcanon greatly, and he immediately sends word for you to return, as he and Vivec are worried that this rumbling might be a result of Vivec's loss of power. When you return, you tell the archcanon of all that you learned, and together you conclude that Sotha Sil's tool was likely weaponized by the Daedric cultists in their ritual and then stolen by the Red Exiles for Chodala, who currently drains Vivec power in order to use it for himself and unite the Archlanders against the tribunal and then use Vivec's power to oust him. When you hurry to Vivec to present your conclusions, you find him in a weakened state, as he is near incapable of keeping himself afloat like in his usual state. Vivec, the archcanon and yourself then conclude that it will be necessary to retrieve Chodala's staff, and then try to use it to restore Vivec's power instead of drain it. This, however, is more easily said than done, as killing Chodala, taking the staff by force, or any violent approach would invite a war with the Ashlanders, and most likely unify them under his command or someone else's command when he becomes a martyr. And thus killing him would be the final drop to a full-out Ashlander unity and cause for war with the tribunal. While Vivec goes in isolation, so the people don't see him in this weakened state, it is decided that you will go back to Aldrin to help Sarin dissuade her brother and somehow get the staff non-violently for Vivec. Upon your arrival, Sarin reveals that her brother has already spoken to most of the wise women, and that most are ready to accept his claim. You two go on a last attempt to talk to the archcanon Chodala himself, but this fails as he almost brands his own sister a traitor and simply walks out. Sarin then tells you that in a few days there will be a hearing of sorts, in which the most respected wise woman Dovrosi, will make a decision on his claim of being the Nerevarine. Sarin tells you that Dovrosi went to the Cavern of the Incarnate, a sacred temple of Azura, dedicated to the return of Imperial Nerevar and where the failed and false incarnates rest. She then explains to you that Dovrosi went there to meditate on her decision as to whether or not to acknowledge Chodala's claim. Sarin then has you hurry yourself to the cavern to convince the wise woman against his claim, while she will try to keep the Ashlanders in check at the camp. Once you arrive at the cavern, you find that the wise woman is ambushed by strange Daedra and that you come just in time to help her. She thanks you for your help and the two of you head into the Cavern of the Incarnate. She then reveals to you that Azura has spoken to her and that an Outlander will come to help her reach the correct decision on Chodala. She then tells you that you are that Outlander and that she isn't convinced on Chodala's claim that he is the Nerevarine, but she also tells you that she fears that refusing his claim will cause for a civil war among Ashlanders because he has a lot of support. So she says that you will need to help prove that Chodala's claim of being the Nerevarine is false. You'll do this by talking to the failed incarnate spirits already in the cavern and discovering the things which led them to their ultimate failure of being the Nerevarine. You discover that each of the failed incarnates has certain flaws, which all made them unfit, and more importantly, all these flaws apply to Chodala, so he could not be the Nerevarine. You then rush to the hearing, and there you and Sarin summon the failed incarnates in the hearing as witnesses, where in front of all the Ashlander tribes they expose Chodala's flaws and disregard him as Nerevar reborn. At that moment, Chodala chooses to flee, and his Red Exiles attack the entire gathering. Many are wounded in the attack while Chodala fled, and just as you are about to chase him, the Daedric prince Azura possesses Sarin and names her Azura's champion. But more importantly, Azura also reveals that Vivec is still losing his power at a rapid pace, and that Red Mountain gets ever more rumbly and that some other powers are at work in the shadows to orchestrate all that is happening. However, these powers in the shadows are even hidden to her, and she then commands you to go with Sarin and investigate the matter further, and then ultimately stop Chodala, as he is still extremely dangerous with his power, and that you go and find out what is going on in the shadows which even Azura cannot grasp. Sarin then goes to chase her brother, while she tells you to get back to Vivec and tell him of all that happened. When you return, Vivec is in a very weak state, as he collapsed and cannot keep himself afloat anymore. And as he collapsed, the Bar Dau, or the moonlet, which is being kept afloat over the sky using Vivec's power, suddenly started moving towards the city again for a moment, instead of being frozen in the sky. This greatly scares the citizens of the city, and many of them demand to see Vivec, who remains isolated as his power is being drained. But, just barely, he manages to freeze it in the sky again, and it's decided that Chodala must be dealt with first, so that he can get his power back. However, Chodala still has the staff with the divine energy of Vivec, making him nearly invincible. So, before you return to Sarin, you decide to visit the mage Barrelzar, former apprentice to Sotha Sil again, to ask if there's a way to circumvent the staff's power. When you get back to him, Barrelzar says that yeah, it's theoretically possible, but for that to happen you will need a tonal inverter device, which can temporarily disrupt the energy flow from the staff. But in order to build such a device, he would need some parts. parts which you have the great honor to collect, as all his previous employees, they fled because they were tired with him. So then you travel across Vvardenfell to 3 different Dwemer ruins as the Red Mountain gets ever more active. And then you collect the 3 vital parts needed for the tonal inverter. Barrelzar then constructs the device for you, and you return to the archcanon with the device. As you arrive at Archcanon Tarvis's office, you find that Sarin is also in there, as she came looking for you. However, since the Tribunal and the Archlanders aren't the best of friends, the Archcanon had the buoyant armigers take her weapons and restrain her. Luckily, you came along just in time to clear up the situation and have Sarin released. In fact, you will need her help, as using the tonal inverter on Chodala and killing him is a 2-man operation, as one person needs to operate the inverter, while the other person fights Chodala. And in another stroke of luck, it just turns out that Sarin found out where Chodala has holed himself up with the remainder of his loyal followers. You see, as Chodala had gotten desperate with the rejection of the tribes, he went to look for aid in other places. Being desperate, he and his followers went to seek refuge in an ancient shrine of Malakath, the god of curses, in hope to receive help from the curse god. When you enter the shrine, it's filled with Daedra, and you find that Chodala's followers are mostly dead. You talk to a wounded follower who reveals that Chodala appealed to Malakath, but that the curse god rebuked him and killed all of them, saying that Chodala already served another prince without realizing it. You and Sarin then notice that the Daedra inside the shrine are not the ones employed by Malakath, but rather Scarfin from the realm of Clavicus Vile, the Daedric prince of bargains. You two then make your way further into the ruins and confront the now mad Chodala. Sarin uses the tonal inverter to circumvent Sunera, and you confront him. Chodala then, unfortunately, refuses to see reason, and even when severed from the staff, he forces you into killing him by attacking you. With Chodala down, Sarin mourns his death, and she wishes to bury him. Meanwhile, she tells you to take Sunera and hurry to Vivec City with the staff to prevent impending disaster, while she'll join you later at the city. When you return to the city, you are reunited with Sarin, and you see that the Bar Dau has come another few meters, and is now dangerously close to the city. You also find Vivec now fully passed out. He's using the last inches of his power to keep the moonlet afloat. You, Sarin and the archcanon then rush to his side with the staff Sunera in order to restore his power. However, in the last moment during the ritual, the archcanon betrays Vivec, using the staff to siphon away the last increments of his power. The archcanon then transforms, and he reveals himself to be Barbus, the shape-shifting hound, servant of Clavicus Vile, who has impersoned the archcanon in order to get close to Vivec. It is then revealed that all of what happened from the cultist to Chodala was Barbus' plot to steal Vivec's power and then use it to reveal the location of Sotha Sil's elusive Clockwork City, which has remained hidden to the world up until that point and also hidden to the gods themselves and to the Daedric princes. The remaining spirit of Vivec then tells you that Barbus has fled to the Clockwork City and that he needs to be chased. However, that he cannot help you find the Clockwork City, as he needs to use the last of his spiritual energy to block the Bar Dau. But before you can chase Barbus, you need to make sure that the moonlet won't actually fall on the city, because otherwise everything will go to hell. So you need to go and retrieve a blessing stone. You know, one of those stones containing sparks of Vivec's power, which he has lent to a construction site in Vivec City where you can go and get it. Canon Levoul then implores you to get the stone as quickly as possible, while he prepares the ritual necessary to use the power in the stone for Vivec. You then go to the construction site, while Sarin pokes around in former archcanon's office to find leads that Barbus might have left there. When you leave Vivec's temple, you see that the Bar Dau, the large moonlet, is now quickly regaining its kinetic energy and is slowly moving towards the city again, only stopped by a weak shield that Vivec is able to power in his spirit shape. You run through the city as parts of the moonlet rain down on the city like meteorites, and the citizens are in total panic. As you approach the construction site, you find the overseer's wife, and she tells you that the site has become unstable after the impact of several moonlet parts, but that the overseer went back to the site to stop looters which tried to profit of the chaos. When you enter the construction site, you fight your way through looters and then find the overseer. She gives you the key to the blessing stone while she returns to her wife. You then obtain the blessing stone, and as you see the Bar Dau coming even closer to the city, you use the stone at the temple to restore a spark of Vivec's power, enabling him to keep the Bar Dau afloat for a little while longer while you go and chase Barbus. Vivec then instructs you to go to Sarin and ask Azura for help in thwarting Clavicus Vile. But as Azura takes over Sarin again, she reveals to you that she also doesn't know the exact location of the Clockwork City, but that she does know that the staff Sunera sent its energy to the Clockwork City, and that the staff sends it to a special reservoir that was built by Sotha Sil during his experiments. You need to get there before Barbus can unleash the energy for Clavicus Vile. She then uses her power to teleport the wizard Balthazar to you, as he knows the location of the Clockwork City, having studied there himself. He then opens a portal which led you to Seth's vault, leading into the Clockwork City. Once there, you confront Barbas at the power reservoir, after having fought countless Clockwork Guardians and failsafes. As you confront him, however, you find out that Barbas was not acting under orders of Clavicus Vile. Rather, he attempted to help his master get some secret plan come along quicker, and making him proud by stealing Vivec's energy. This has actually all worked out great for Clavicus Vile, as now the location of the Clockwork City is open to him. However, as you defeat Barbas, this plan is also thwarted, as in the end it set its master back a few paces, as now you have discovered that Clavicus Vile is apparently plotting something, and that Barbas' failure of his plan laid all of this out in the open. Clavicus Vile then attempts to trap you in order to make sure that the knowledge of his plan doesn't get out, but Balthazar quickly comes to your aid, and together you teleport back to Vivec City. You then restore Vivec's energy, who's then able to avert disaster and freeze the moonlet back in the sky above. Then a final reward ceremony happens, and Vivec rewards those who have helped thwart the plot to steal his energy. He names Canon Levul the new archcanon, and Sarin heads back to her tribe. You, as Outlander, get named champion, and all is right in the world. Or is it? Because Clavicus Vile is still plotting. In fact, as we learn in the Clockwork DLC and later in the Somerset chapter, which followed this chapter, he plots together with Mephala and Nocturnal to reshape Nirn in their own image. However, those are stories for another day. For now, I hope that all of you enjoyed this story, and I wish to thank everybody who put me in a position to make videos like this, not to the least my top patrons Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Mr. Para, Hammer of the Scots and Mr. Christmas. These people, along with all the other Patreon supporters on screen, make these kind of videos possible, and for that I am very grateful. That said, I will not see you next week in the next new video, as this video has been posted on a special date for Mr. Wallow Wizard and his girlfriend, so I'll see you coming Saturday, in just 3 more days. Isn't that something? See ya.